How we doing, everybody? Today is Tuesday the 5th of October 2021. Sitting here with my mom. She's recently arrived in Thailand and done the Phuket Quarantine Sandbox. So she's going to give you guys a little detailed rundown of her experience. All right? How you doing, Mom?
Just wonderful. How about you?
Doing well, thanks. So give us a rundown from the beginning of the process all the way through, yeah?
Okay. In March 2020, we had planned a big celebration of family in Thailand for my 80th birthday. But COVID put an end to that. So I was in Australia for the first year of COVID, and I began to think, what am I doing here alone in Australia? I have a very global family. I have a daughter in Spain, a son in Thailand, and a daughter in the United States. So I thought to myself, I don't want to live alone anymore. I'm going to move to another country to be with my children. So I chose Thailand, and to my surprise, I sold my house in one day in Stanthorpe, Australia. So that really speeded up the process. Suddenly, I was couch surfing at the age of 81, staying with sisters and anyone who was happy to have a lonely old 81 stay with them. And so I applied, first of all, for a Thai visa. I knew that I had to have a vaccination to be able to fly, so I was very happy to hear that I was able to have an AstraZeneca vaccination. But on having that, I found out that I had to wait 90 days for the next shot. So that gave me quite a lot of time to start the process of getting a visa and all the medical requirements associated with it. So I got the paperwork for the visa, for a retirement visa I'm talking about, and it was quite daunting, especially in regards to the medical requirements. To my amazement, I had to have a test for leprosy, for syphilis. I'm thankful to tell you that I passed those with flying colors. And nowadays, to enter Thailand, you have to show that you have enough insurance coverage that if you should get COVID or bring COVID into the country, your insurance is going to cover it. There's a requirement of 40,000 Thai baht for inpatient and 40,000 for outpatient. So getting the insurance was quite a problem for me because of my age. You have to get insurance from a company inside Thailand, and the government proposes about 15 companies that might take you. So I started exploring those and, of course, got refused. And finally, with the help of two wonderful young Thai women, I was able to get insurance through Cigna company, and I had to pay through the neck because of the fact that of my age, but they did decide to cover me. I had to fill in all these forms about my health, and I'm sure they thought, oh, this is a miraculous 81-year-old. She doesn't seem to have anything wrong with her, because I am blessed with good health, except for arthritis in my knees. I made the mistake of saying that I had arthritis in my knees. When you're filling in these forms, these health requirements, just skate through them, just saying you have nothing wrong with you at all, unless, of course, it's an existing condition. And because I said I had arthritis in my knees, I ended up having to waste another month getting a clearance and getting the insurance. So anyway, I was thinking that getting the Thai visa was going to be a problem, but eventually, once I submitted the paperwork, and you have to have everything notified by a justice of peace to make it all legal. I also had to have a police clearance and show that I had a certain amount of money in the bank, which is always standard, I'm sure. And so I got my Thai visa. I was so excited. I thought I'm home and hose. But then began the process of trying to fly out of the country. In Australia at the moment, you have to have a special government exemption to be able to fly out. And this really presents a problem because you have to bring together miraculously 3 aspects that will allow you to get into Thailand. You have to have a flight, a condition of entry, and accommodation for your quarantine time, and they all have to gel on the same day. It wasn't easy getting a flight, as you can imagine, and trying to combine these 3 to happen on the same day was quite a process. The condition of entry, you just have to submit a form to the Thai embassy in your country showing that you have a visa and that you have a plane flight and that you have bookings for quarantine made. And you submit this, and then the Thai government looks at that, and then they give you a condition of entry for 1 day. It has to be that certain day. So that if you can't make that day, then you have to start the whole process all over again. So anyway, I applied for the exemption for leaving Australia and was flat out refused. I just got this back on my email. I just got exemption declined. No sort of reason why, just declined. And it just threw me for a loop. I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? Because I'd already booked my flight and I'd also booked my accommodation for quarantine. So it came into my head that I should get an immigration lawyer. So I looked up immigration lawyers in the Brisbane area, and fortunately I chose a really good one, and we started the process of many forms. Actually, before I came to Thailand, my whole life and anxiety level was ruled by filling in forms. I tell you, I never want to see another form again in my life. But in these days, everything is data-driven, and you have to have a number for this and a number for that. So anyway, the immigration lawyer process started. I had to get all sorts of Commonwealth declarations, statutory declarations for myself and from Gabe in Thailand. And then, of course, when they arrived, because some of his declarations were in Thai regarding like his rent and electricity and water and showing that he had utility usage and so forth. So then I had to find someone who could translate the Thai into English, and it had to be a certified translator. Then I had to go through the whole process of forming a case of why it was important for me to leave Australia. And so with the lawyer's help, over about a month, we were able to do this. And again, as I said, just filling form after form after form. With about 4 days left before my flight left, I finally got the exemption. Oh, praise God. Thank you for those wonderful immigration lawyers that worked so hard to make it possible for me to leave Australia. It is just amazing that Australia is supposed to be a democracy, and yet, you have to get permission to be able to leave the country, but that's another story altogether. So anyway, came the night of the 4th when I was due to fly, and I arrive at the airport in Brisbane. There is not one thing open. There was a lockdown at the present time then. And nothing was open, not even a coffee lounge. The only thing that was open was the counter desk where you take your luggage and so forth. And with a few sort of lonely, confused souls wandering around, I really felt like I was in The Twilight Zone, that movie, that series that was playing in America a few years ago, where supernaturally you were transported into this weird sort of reality. And so I got through the requirements at the airport, which were very, very full on, and went down and was told to wait in this one certain area. It's amazing in COVID, the authoritarian aspect of everything. Like you just design this one seat and that's where you have to stay. But in this process, I met a very nice woman who was going back to Bangkok in Thailand. She had been a boat refugee to Australia years ago and had lived in Australia for quite a while and is now living in Thailand. And she was so helpful and so wonderful. And we sort of became friends. And so anyway, when I got on the plane, talking about a ghostly experience, there were two people in my whole area. That's what I mean about being on the Twilight Zone. I mean, just two lonely little heads and all these empty seats, hurtling in space, flying towards Singapore. How Singapore Airlines possibly still exists, having flights from Australia to Singapore, is beyond my belief. I don't know how they do it. But anyway, we went through all the rigmaroles of safety precautions, just like it was a normal flight with just two people. Anyway, when we arrived in Singapore, transit passengers were given a bracelet to wear, and then you were shepherded to form this line so that you were socially distanced 3 feet from the person in front of you, and with all these eyes looking to make sure that you didn't move out of that formation. I felt like I was on a chain gang. And then we were moved into a room for transit passengers, and once again you were assigned a seat and you couldn't move. But I broke the law, folks. I broke the law and went and got a cup of coffee. I actually left my seat. So anyway, then you were shepherded to your connecting flight, and quite to the contrary, the flight from Singapore to Phuket was very, very full. So there was a lot of movement between Singapore and Phuket. If you are considering a connecting flight, I would say go to Singapore. So when I arrived in Phuket, I was just desperate to go to the toilet. So I rushed off to the toilet, and then in this process, of course, I became last in line for going through health checks and immigration and so forth. But my friend I mentioned earlier had raced to the front and had saved me a seat, and much to the consternation of other passengers was waiting me to come and join her. So I got through to the health checks quite early by being a bit brash, a lot of bravado. Anyway, the health checks, they check all of your health papers, the fact that you've had a COVID test 72 hours before you fly, and that you have been fully vaccinated, and that you don't have a fever, and blah, blah, blah. So that was your first thing. And then, of course, you go to the immigration counter, and anyone who's been through immigration in Thailand, they know the story. You're just shaking in your boots, you know, they flicking through papers, looking up at you, back to the paper, trying, it seems, to find something that will not allow you to come in. And I had the necessary insurance coverage. Oh, I forgot to mention that you have to have a coverage of up to 100,000 US dollars in your health policy, and I didn't have like an actual certificate. I had my policy which showed the coverage, but I didn't have a certificate. So my immigration officer was looking, finally called the supervisor over because I didn't have the appropriate certificate. But the supervisor, of course, looked at my policy and saw that it was okay. And so, miracle upon miracle, I get the stamp. So I'm through. What a breath. I thought, I made it. It was a bit weird sort of not having anyone to meet you after this journey because I had to go into quarantine. So, of course, Gabe and Ohm weren't there. And it was sort of a real letdown. Like, I'm here, but there's no friendly, happy face to and arms to welcome you. So the next thing, I had to have a COVID test. And the last thing you feel after all this stress and flying is to have something stuck up your nose into your brain. No, I'm just joking. But the last thing I felt was like a COVID test, but I had it and was cleared. And then it was pouring rain. And I went to the area where I was to pick up the van that my hotel had sent. Well, what confusion. Rain, people shouting, where you go, and buses and cars. And finally, I saw my hotel van. I was staying at this hotel called Laguna Angsana. And I got in the van and off we went to go to the hotel. Well, what a surprise. This hotel was like 5-star. It was like a dream answer to all the stress that I'd encountered in the months building up to my trip. Such excessive politeness from all the staff, nothing that they couldn't do for you. You're sort of in the land of the rich and the famous. And so I was shown to my room. I opened the door. Oh my goodness, I nearly died. Sunken bathtub, expansive room, incredible views from my deck, all sorts of swimming pools, evident access to the beach, and I mean, just amazing decor. And I just thought, well, I've come from the twilight zone into another dream. But anyway, I had to stay there for 14 days, which was not a problem at that stage. So anyway, originally, if you came to Thailand, you had to quarantine for 14 days in your room. Your food was sort of brought to your door, and they knocked on the door, and then you had to wear a mask to reach out and get your food, and you had to have COVID tests from your room and so forth. But with the Sandbox program, they were allowing you to move around the hotel outside of your room. You couldn't go into Phuket, but you could move around the hotel, and you had to have 3 COVID tests, which meant, of course, you did leave the hotel just exclusively for that reason. But, you know, it really didn't, being able to move around the hotel didn't present a problem because there were so many things to do. You could go to the beach, you could kayak, you could go to any number of swimming pools, eat by the pool, restaurants. So if anyone's looking for a hotel to stay at, I would certainly recommend Laguna Angsana. They also have a health resort, and they have a hotel there connected. They are outside of Phuket, so they're sort of like situated on a beautiful beach area. again, sort of akin to the rich and what the rich and famous would want if they want a, sort of a laid-back holiday. So my days ran like this. I'd wake up and I'd go off to this incredible buffet breakfast. They had a Western-style breakfast and an Asian-style breakfast. Every single morning, I'd think I'm going to try the Asian breakfast, but I always opted for the good old bacon and eggs and fruit and breads and so forth. It was hard to shake that old Western breakfast thought that you have in your mind. Anyway, you had to wear a mask to enter and have your temperature taken before you went into the restaurant. And then, of course, once you started eating, you could take your mask off. But the staff were just so helpful and friendly, and as I said, almost excessively polite. And then afterwards, I would go back to my room and check emails and just sort of take it easy. And then I'd go for a swim. Well, when I say swim, I just, sort of frolic around in the water. And then they had these small like rivers running all around the grounds of the hotel, and so I would use those as sort of like a walking exercise. They were like about shoulder height or from waist to shoulder height, so you could walk. So I sort of used that as a walking exercise. And then I'd always eat lunch beside the pool, and then the afternoon would come, and I'm happy to tell you I would take a nap, and then I'd wake up and read, or then off I'd go and have a meal at night. The government was, with the lockdown process, they weren't allowing any alcohol. So I had to buy, if I wanted a drink, I had to buy a bottle of wine and have it in my room. And of course I did this. So that was my day, my resume for about 14 days. I did have 3 COVID tests where a van is sent for you and they take you to this site that is set up for COVID testing. And it was, the site had a 7-Eleven, and if you're in Thailand, you know that 7-Eleven sells everything. It's not just a convenience store. So I popped in and got some chips and nuts and snacky sort of things to take to my room on the occasions that I went there. Anyway, I successfully booked a flight from Phuket to Chiang Mai, and Gabe and Owen were going to come and meet me there. And I thought, well, I'm home, everything's working well, except the day before my quarantine ended, the government replaced another lockdown, cancelled all flights, trains and buses. So what am I to do? Here I am in Phuket. My quarantine is finishing and I can't go anywhere. So I mentioned that I had met this Vietnamese woman, and her husband was able to secure a government van that you could rent as part of the Sandbox program to take you to Bangkok. So she said I could come with her to Bangkok. So I thought, well, Bangkok was sort of more of an appealing situation as far as like maybe getting a flight to Chiang Mai than being stuck in Phuket, which is an island, which I didn't know, but it is an island. So I thought, well, I'll do that. She was kind enough to say I could join her. And so I got my release from quarantine, changed hotels to another amazing 5-star hotel because we were having an early 5 o'clock start with a van. And so I was ready again to fill in forms and face immigration, face checkpoints, and all of the necessary things that are required at the moment. So I there was another Australian and my Vietnamese friend, and we got in the van and off we set out for Bangkok. I had forgot to mention that I was in constant contact with Gabe every single day, of course, and he had said to me that, that I could perhaps get a similar type van and come alone from Phuket to Chiang Mai. So I was looking into that, but in unknown to me, Om's parents, those dear and wonderful people, they had got very alarmed because some Farang, that's what they call people who aren't Thai. It's actually spelled Ferang, but because Thai people sometimes can't pronounce ours, they make it into an L and they say Falong. So some Falong had been murdered by going out alone on a beach. But anyway, Om's parents had decided that they didn't want me doing anything alone. So unbeknown to me, they had decided that they would come down and pick me up if I could arrange to meet them at a place outside of Bangkok called Ratchaburi. So Gabe mentioned the possibility of this, and while I was considering it, next minute I get a message, and it's a picture of them on their way, sitting in the car, on their way down to Ratchaburi to pick me up. Oh my goodness, what a relief. So anyway, back to the journey from Phuket to Ratchaburi. Of course, I had to go through immigration with the same process of them looking at your passport, all of the papers, making sure you have finished the sandbox quarantine, holding the stamp in midair, but never stamping your papers, and then finally stamping your papers. And off you go to the first checkpoint where they put their heads in the window or open the door and look in the car and look in your boot and make sure that everything is in order. And off you go, checkpoint after checkpoint. It's the same thing. I felt like I was in a Russian spy movie, actually. So finally, we arrived at Ratchaburi, and there were those beautiful, familiar faces of Om's parents. I had met them on a previous trip to Thailand, and of course they can't speak one word of English, and I couldn't speak one word of Thai, but we didn't need words to have the joy of meeting each other. And of course, it was so nice that the driver had gone off the main highway, so I tipped him very generously for doing that. So that night we stayed, I was just exhausted. We stayed the night at Ratchaburi to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning for an early morning start, because Om's stepfather, didn't want to meet a lot of checkpoints. So off we go on another journey early in the morning, and this is kind of a comical note, but I kept on thinking how easily we got through all these checkpoints that we encountered. But then I found out that Om's brother-in-law works for the police, and apparently he was calling ahead with our number plate at all the checkpoints. And so we just sailed through. So in Thailand, like anywhere else, it just pays to know the right people. So anyway, Om's parents live outside of Chiang Mai, and so we drove to where they live. Oh, I forgot to tell you, as we were driving along, I saw a signpost that said Sukhothai. I recognized the words, and I had remembered that one other time Gabe and Om and I had visited Sukhothai, and it's the place where the amazing ruins of the first Thai settlers. It's like seeing the Colosseum in Rome. There are just these amazing, crumbling, restored old sites, and I would certainly recommend it. Anyone who visits Thailand to go to Sukhothai and see it. But anyway, I knew that it wasn't that far out of Chiang Mai. So, when I saw Sukhothai, I thought, I'm nearly there. So finally we got to Om's parents' place, and Gabe and Om and Alonso were just leaving their hotel. They had to book into their hotel. And so, of course, the hospitality of Thai people is beyond compare. And of course, the minute I arrived, I was ushered in and offered food and was sitting there in the pride of place, waiting. And then I hear a car pull up and I look out, and here are the dear faces that I'd been waiting for so long. And I just took a deep breath and I thought, I made it. And of course, then we had the warmest reunion and welcome. And I'm just here to tell you that it was all worthwhile. And I'm just loving my life in Thailand. And every day is an adventure, and it's everything that I had dreamed and wanted. So I'm just telling you about my experience of getting to Thailand and all those bad memories of phones and anxiety and medical tests and COVID vaccinations and yet another form to fill in and waiting for the call from the immigration lawyer. They've all somehow just been lost in the wonder of being here. So thank you very much.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Mom. What a journey to get you here. You guys can ask any questions in the comments down below, and we're happy to help you out with any information. And of course, things are changing rapidly every day right now, so potentially your quarantine experience might only be 7 days now, it's looking like. So that's good news, but that's it, guys. So hope you enjoyed that, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much for your time, Mom.
My pleasure. Wait a minute, what am I going to say? My Ben Ra. That means...
No worries, mate.
No worries, mate.
That's right. All right. Peace, guys. Take care of yourselves. See you on the next one. Thanks, Mom.
He asked me why I write this. Well, that's a loaded question. I guess I'm telling stories. Notebook full of lessons. I live on writer's block. The notion comes and goes. Just up that country road is my humble bungalow. Lived in Cali with moms and Alaska with pops. First half of my life in no particular chaos. Busted at 16 for brawling, learned all about law and order. Couple months for assault and battery, it had to be done.